Welcome to the PAFA wire wrapping channel. Today I'm going to show you how to go from this to this. Pictured are the materials that you'll be using for this project, as well as the descriptions of the wires and the stone and some other items. The tools you'll need will be a pair of tweezer nose pliers, a pair of wire straighteners, and a pair of flush cutters. Okay, here we go. First things first, if you're a beginner, the wires that I like to use, especially for beginning people, are copper wire and round, copper round. This is 20 gauge. 20 and 21 gauge tend to be the go-to for most. To make the connection where we're going to wrap it at the bottom, which would be this right here, you take a half round. You could use a round wire to wrap a round wire, but I like the half round because it just holds things better. This is about 4 inches, but I'm not going to need that much. For the half round, you can kind of see on one side, it looks very flat. That's the inside where you should wrap. On this side, it looks more like round wire, and that's going to be the outside. So you would take this and you would wrap it around your 3 wires tightly, but holding the wires so that they're all lined up and not bunched together. And I'm gonna do about 10 wraps. You can try to get them close to each other. You don't want them on top of each other. If they're not close at the end, you can squish them together with your tools. And wherever the wire is going to end up, I'm just gonna, because of the curve seems to be going a little bit more that way, I'm going to cut this off, so this will be the inside. And these are flush cutters. Flush cutters cut flush when you cut from here. If you cut this way, you're going to have a sharp angled edge on your wire. This part is going to be cut with the flush side. So you cut it about halfway between 3 wires so that when you lay it down and squish it, it won't be showing out the other end. Okay, so these are needle nose or tweezer nose pliers that I bought. That I absolutely love this brand, Xuron, for this particular plier, and you can get those on Amazon. So I'm squishing together what I have now, which is right now currently 5 wraps, and we're going to wrap that about 5 more times. So we're going to have 10 wraps, and then you squish them together, and then we're going to push this under just like the other one, cut it right about there, and then anything excess, if you save your scraps, you can use them for other projects. And you can also, if you buy from the company I buy from mostly is Rio Grande and or Rio Grande. I'm not sure how they pronounce that, but there's an E on the end, just like the river. And after you accumulate a whole lot of scraps, you can send it back to them and get some credit for more wire. Okay, so once you've got that, you want to squish it down nice. And anytime you cut your wire, want to keep it collected. You don't want it flying all over your living room or wherever you're cutting. I'm currently in my living room. This is a triangle tray, and it's great for beaders, especially because of the way the ends are. You can collect your beads and then pour them into the bag or the container they came out of. But you can also use these just to collect any loose wire bits as you cut, and then pour those into your other container. So you've got your, what is it? I think it's 9 inches. 9 inches times 3 of these plus this bit that you put on here. So now you're ready. You want to go to your self-healing mat. You can get those on Amazon or other craft stores. That way you can measure very easily. So this is 9 inches, and then you want your middle wrap to be in the middle at 4.5, and that's exactly where it is. So that's your next step. Then I have a trick. The stone that we're going to be using is a Carnelian. It's about 25 millimeters by 18 millimeters, or about 1 inch long by about a little more than a 1/2 inch wide. So this Carnelian stone, trying to wrap around it, you know, this way is not going to be easy. So what I do is I look for something in the house that might be about the same size as the stone, and this happens to be this little cap I got from some spritz bottle. And so what I will do is I will use that, and I will just try to center that and wrap it around there, which makes it much easier. And then I just kind of straighten it up with my fingers. So you wrap that around there, and then you have that right, hopefully centered. And then another trick I have is these, I'm not sure what this is called, but you can buy this in a craft store or school supplies. It's just sticky stuff like a silly putty. I take a little bit and I put it on my self-healing mat. Once you do that, these need to be straightened just a tad. So you do that and you get it to there. You want to try to have the meat a little bit above. You don't want it right down on the stone because aesthetically it'll look better if it's you know, maybe half an inch or so above. And right where it meets the line, take your 3 wires, make sure they're all lined up and not bunched up on each other, and press that. And then you want to do the same thing, bend it all the way over until it meets the line. And then right at the same area, bend it up. So these should be meeting right at the same spot. Then you take it, this is going to need a little bit of straightening, but you want to keep that little bend where you had it. Then you can take your 6, now you have 6 wires, even though they're really only 3. I like to turn this around, make sure the stone still sits nicely inside your wires. Make sure that these are lined up. Sometimes you can be a little bit off, but if it's a little bit off, just take your pliers and just try to make a similar bend right at that bend. Oops. Okay, so then just double check. Okay, now we're going to make what we call the bail, which is the part that would be this part that your stone hangs from your cord. Okay, and again I'm going to use the half round wire, but I'm not going to cut it off of the spool because I don't know how much I'm going to need. And then I'm going to use this tool, which is a wire straightener, which is really cool. You take it on a wire, you can see there are lots of bends and things, and especially with half round, you want to be sure you don't have it kinked up because it can really bend around on you before you realize it. So just hold on to the spool, hold on to the wire, and just straighten it out. There you go, nice and straight. And then you pick up your wires and you will put them together. I'm trying to make this look more even. Okay. Okay. Then you're going to do a few wraps, and you want the very end of the wire to go toward this part. Okay, I'm being very technical because I don't know the term for it. Okay, so you just want maybe an inch, inch and a half, and you're going to wrap it around a few times, keeping your 6 wires connected and not overlapping, and just a few times. And then to finish that, you just kind of press it up toward the front. And you'll take your flush cutters and just kind of cut that inside a little bit. And I did something I shouldn't have done. I tell my students not to do. Make sure that you hold on to your little wire bit as you cut, because if you don't, that wire bit can go flying and you don't know where it's going to go flying. And the last thing you want is to have food or drink in your work area, because if you snip a little wire and it goes flying and you have a cup of coffee or something, or you have your cat's water dish, which I have to go check now, you want to make sure, you know, you're not going to have any wires going into something that anybody's going to ingest, because then you're going to end up in the hospital and nobody wants that. Okay, so we're going to try and separate, I've got the wrong wire here, the 2 front wires, okay, and bend them this way. Then you're going to go around to the 2 back wires, if you can figure out which ones they are. And I think that's these. Okay, and then the 2 middle wires will be the bail. So then you take your wire here excuse my ugly hand, I actually cut myself because my handy dandy tool slipped when I was making some earrings and it went right into my hand. And you don't want that to happen, so never have it pointed toward your skin or your face or anything else when you're using a tool. So I'm telling you all the safety things, and you don't need to know how I found them out. Okay, so basically you can just kind of twist this around. The only problem with doing that is that as you twist, and you want to push it down as you twist so it's nice and make sure they're not on top of each other, that they're lined up. But as you twist, this can start to bend one way or the other, and you want to just double check it every now and then and straighten it back out so that it's lined up properly. So let's go ahead and try and do this. And I like to keep my wire right there so that there's no chance that it's going to twist on me in the wrong direction, the half round. Okay, the other ones, who knows? Okay. Now, and you want to get, I don't know, inch and a half, whatever aesthetically is pleasing to you as far as how big the bail is. I tend to not want it to be too big or too small. I like to make my bails at least big enough that you can easily pull your cord in or out of it so that you don't have to take little components off the end of your cord just to fit it back through, because sometimes people want to change the cord that you might give them and use a different kind of a cord. So always keep that in mind when you make a bail. So I think this is about an inch. And so the way you're going to do here with the bail is first you're going to take your wires, your front and back wires, and pull them to the sides. I'm going to make sure you get the correct wires, the ones that are on the front and the back of the middle wire, and they're going to go on the side now. And then you're going to take this and you're going to make sure your two wires are straight, pointed straight. See, they got a little bit bent, pointed straight. And then to form your bail, you're going to go forward and then backward. I think I might need a little bit more. And also, you might want to get one of those little bobbin cord keeper things, wire keeper things, because this is what happens to me. And then I have to go back and straighten it back up. It's quite a mess, and I know you don't want that. So consider getting one of those. I do have some, and I always forget to use them. So I'm going to cut, I don't know, 3-4 inches, and then I'll deal with this later. Okay, so I probably don't even need that much. Another thing you can do so that you're not twisting your wires up is just to do this, but being very careful to make sure, as usual, that they don't overlap like that. That's just messy looking. Okay, so you want to make sure they're right on top of each other in a nice pretty line. And okay, so what you want basically is, once you've got your wraps, you want to bring this down and see. I think it might need, you want to straighten that too. It might, no, it's probably about good. I think that's good. So when you finish, you take your flush cutters again, cut the back of that, and then squish it down because you don't want any sharp ends. Then you're going to take these wires and kind of gently warm them up so that they'll go under nicely. You're going to push this through and make sure, like I can see that's a little bit twisted, so make sure everything's nice and straight, and push your bail through so you get it where you want it. And make sure too, when they go through, that these two wires don't get twisted. You want them to be lined up, not twisted. Okay. Another thing you can use, this is a bail making plier, but it's really for small, like jump rings and things. And I have it marked with a Sharpie so I can see which size I want to use. But you can use that to make it, you know, more bulbous. I'd like to use a bigger one actually, but there we go. I think I want mine to be kind of like this, but then a little bit more toward the front and a little bit in, and that's about right. Okay. So you have your two wires here, and they go through, and then you can secure them by taking them. You'll secure the bail by taking these wires all the way around to the back, Now make sure before you secure anything that these wires are still nice and lined up, because when you do secure it, you don't want to put it over squished wires. So you take it to the back, make sure it's where you want it, make sure these are not overlapping, and then you're going to cut off enough to where you leave yourself some to tuck it in here, but not have the wire end come through to the front, really. You just want it to be around like the second, I'm not showing you this properly, the second wire here maybe. Okay, so that might be too much. I think I'm gonna cut it back a little bit more. Okay, cut it right there. Okay, so let me show you. Let's see where that's cut. And then you're gonna take your Xuron tweezer nose pliers, and you are going to try to tuck this in and gently, because you don't want to scratch up the wires if you can help it. And you will, as a beginner, you will scratch up your wires, and just deal with it. It's going to happen. And then the same thing over here. See how these are kind of squished? We want to make sure they're nice and flat before we connect that. So, sorry I keep going off screen. Again, this is my first video. Please have patience. Okay, then we're going to do that. Okay, so do the same thing with that. And as you can hopefully see, I'm going to take this and I'm going to press it down and get a nice snug thing, and make sure once again you go back and you just make sure these are not getting overlapped. Okay, all right, now we want to get our stone locked in before we do the rest. We're going to take our stone and we're going to make sure it still fits nicely. Tighten this up as much as we can. Make sure that this is even. Make sure, like, put this down and that lines up with your bail, and your bail may need straightening, which mine does. Okay, so your bail and the middle of this, might need to move it over just a tad. Those should be lined up. Okay, then you can stick this, let me just check. Okay, so this is the front. And see, you can see that did come up to the front a little bit. So, I mean, it's going to be covered, so it's not a big deal, but if you think it's gonna stick out, you can always go back, loosen it up a little bit, and just snip off the end, and then tuck it in a little higher so it doesn't show up quite as much. Okay, it's still showing, but it will be hidden. Okay, so you're gonna stick your stone in there just to make sure it fits. And this one's a little bit loose. If it's a little bit loose, I would suggest, I'm gonna turn this upside down because it's gonna sit more flat. If it's a little bit loose, you can take it here, push it down, kind of push it so you know the end of the stone is all the way at the end here. And once you've done that, just kind of, you can push this in just a little bit to make it, nice and snug. Okay, then you're going to go to the back and make sure it's the back. And the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take this, well, first make sure it's nice and straight. Sometimes these things get out of whack. And take the back wire as close to this, once you're sure that it's lined up nicely, and grab it right there gently and push in like that. Okay, and you're going to do the same thing on this side, trying not to grab the second wire, which I just did. If that happens, you can always get between them and then straighten that out a bit more. Okay. Okay, so we're gonna push that in the same way so it looks like this. And then you may want to pull your wires out a bit because you don't want them all narrow. And because we're going to put the stone in at this point. Okay, so got this. You're going to take your stone, you're going to sit it in there, and it should sit nicely. Okay. Okay. And then we'll do the same thing here, and we will lock the stone in. Just take your plier and try to push it all the way as close as you can get to those wraps down there. And do it the same on the other side. By the way, I'm left-handed, so I hope if you're right-handed, you just do everything opposite or whatever. So there you go. That's in there. And the next thing we're going to do is we are going to wrap the right side first. So we're going to take the front and the back wires, and we want to give them a bit of a curve. And the back wire should be slightly higher than the front. And I like to get it, you know, nice and tight because I don't want it to, unless you like a big flourish. If you like a big flourish, then you can just make them higher. I like a more subtle flourish. Kind of like also want to bring this gently toward the bail, more like that. And this one too. And make sure again they are not twisted. Okay, and you take them around, and you want to try to not overlap this one with the bail wire. And take them around to the back. I think I brought these all the way around, so we will bring them all the way around one time. Okay, and make sure they're nice and lined up as you bring them to the back. And then we're going to cut these off right here. I'd say maybe there. It's always better to cut you know, to where you have too much than not enough, because not enough is bad. So make sure when you cut that you definitely have enough to lock it in, because otherwise you may have to redo the whole piece. You take individually take each wire, and I like to try to hold on to these in the front so they don't get whacked out of shape when you pull wires. I didn't mention that earlier, but that's really a good plan. Okay, so there we go. And we're going to press these down and nice and tight. That's how that looks so far. And you want to kind of mush those together a little bit. The next thing to do is we're going to do the same thing over here. But before we complete that, now I have these 4mm copper beads, and just for an accent, you stick that copper bead, and when you buy beads, make sure the holes are large enough that it'll, you know, go over a 20 gauge wire. And so you do that, and you want to let your bead come down a bit. And now this side I like to do lower than this side, so you can pull like that to do that. Okay, and then wrap it in line behind the other, and then the same thing with this. It'll be a little bit higher, but, and I like to sort of try to bring this over in front a little bit. Okay, and this one has to be a little higher. I may have made these a little too low because they're almost the same, but they're not, they're okay. And then just bring that around to the back also. And you can opt, depending on what you want to do, you can just cut it there, or you could wrap them around again like that, which I think I'm going to do today. So we want to bring this back a little bit, and then maybe separate these guys out a little bit. Bring this one back a little bit. All right, and you know, it's your design too, so you decide exactly the way you want to make it, but this is how you do it. So make sure when you do this, you don't cut like other wires besides the one you're trying to cut. That would be very bad and tragic, and we can't have that. I barely left myself enough to tuck that in, but I think we can do it. Okay. All right. And we're going to tuck that one first, and then this one. And oops. See, this can happen when you don't leave yourself quite enough to tuck. It can slip on you. All right. So there we have it. That's the piece. And also, in another video, I'll show you how to do this, but I made these ends on the cord. You just get a big thing of cord and then you make your own wire ends. So you can stick that through and connect that. And there you go. There's your piece. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.